I am so excited to dive into yet another epic Rebel Radio conversation with my dear friend, colleague, Tyler Foley. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here.
Cindy, it's just you know, I love coming on. I love having our conversations. I'm excited for this one because I get to swear.
Yes, fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah. Woo! Feels good.
So tell us a little bit about who you are.
Really briefly, I am a father, husband, entrepreneur, author, speaker, Weezer fan, seeker of beaches, in that order.
And tell us about the book that you wrote.
Oh, Power to Speak Naked is a deep dive into the incredibly weird brain of mine and how it is that I can stand up on stage and not care. To be like, because everybody talks about it, right? It's the number one fear over death. And you're like, how can that possibly be? It's actually not the number one fear in the world. Apparently, the number one fear of the world is a fear of heights, fear of falling. And then it's public speaking and then death. But public speaking over death, which leads to the great Seinfeld joke that it means that you'd rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy, which to me just blows my mind.
Yeah. And I remember the first time I saw you speak, it was a few years ago. And I was just fascinated because you're so comfortable up there.
Thank you. And yes, I really am. It's so the thing is I've been on stage since I was 6 years old. Mm-hmm. And it's home for me. Yeah. Like I would do anything and everything to get on stage. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter in what aspect of it. I love performance. I love to entertain. I love being with a crowd. Like it is, I don't know. It's home. It's a comfort zone for me, mm-hmm. which is again, ironic because so many people are the exact opposite of that. Like I'm willing to admit I'm the weird one. But the problem when you're weird is you look at other people and you go, you're weird. And
what are you freaking out about?
Yeah, and you're like, no. I am the majority. You are not, sir. And I go, but what? No, right. You're weird. So like it's hard to step outside of my lens. So when I wrote the book, it was kind of a reverse engineering of how it is that I came to have this gift and this ability, mm-hmm. and then see if there was a way that I could rapidly teach people how to find this comfort, because it's not hard. Mm-hmm. And especially for me, because again, starting on stage, I started before I knew I needed to be afraid of it. And a lot of people don't understand. They've been conditioned to think that that's a thing.
Right? Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and it's reprogramming that conditioning, that false narrative that you're given to be afraid of the stage. And it starts with even the fact that, like, I will admit that stage fright is a real thing. Mm-hmm. But everybody who says that they're afraid of public speaking is lying to themselves. Mm-hmm. And I can disprove it right now. You ready, Cindy?
I'm ready.
I want anybody out there who's listening in every country in the world except for North Korea to think of the last time they were at a restaurant. Mm-hmm. Were you able to order food?
Public speaking.
Yeah, that's right. You did. And the best is when people are like, oh, no, you don't understand. I'm afraid of speaking to strangers. And I'm like, did you know your waitstaff before you ordered your food? Because if you didn't know your waitstaff, you spoke to a stranger. Yeah, but I'm really afraid to ask for what I want. So you ordered food you didn't want? Like the restaurant thing destroys every myth around public speaking in 1 second. Because you were speaking in public to a stranger, asked for what you want, and you got it. So there you go. If you can go to a restaurant and order food, you can speak in public. But and even more challenging too, like somebody like me who travels a lot, not only do I ask for what I want in public, half the time I'm asking for it in a language that I don't understand.
Right.
I think I want this picture.
It looks good. Let's do that.
It looks like the least one to upset my tummy tum. So, like that. I every time I think about it, it's the first thing that pops into my head. I'm like, you are not afraid of public speaking. Are you? Do you have stage fright? Yes. Is that a real thing? Yes. Are you afraid of public speaking? No, you are not. So stop saying it, because it becomes this misdiagnosis. And the reality is we're actually afraid of public judgment. Yeah. And that's what it boils down to. And when you say that you're afraid of public speaking, you spend all this time avoiding this thing that isn't actually a fear, then you're not addressing the actual root cause or the base fear that's causing the anxiety. Yeah. And so it's the same as misdiagnosing heartburn as a heart attack, right? You actually need to take some Pepto-Bismol, but you're running around trying to find defibrillators and an aspirin. That ain't going to help you.
Right.
So
that's a great analogy. I love that. I love that. So before we went live, I shared a little bit of your quantum numerology with you. Yeah. And I'm curious how that landed for you. What was one of your big takeaways?
Well, first of all, how eerily accurate it could be based on a date of birth. Now, here I've always believed in numerology, astrology. I do actually, I think that it's more of a science than an art. So, yeah. But I recognize that there's a lot of generalities and coincidences and whatever. My problem is when you have so many stacked coincidences, you kind of go, oh, but is that coincidence or is that repeatable science? Right. So, it was actually really eerie when you were talking about it, especially for me being a 10. And needing and happiness being my primary driver, especially wanting to be on stage. Like I said, stage is my comfort thing, and I do it for free. I pay to be on stage. So money is not the motivating factor. Right. There was a musical that I was in a year and a half ago now. And I was like, I want to be in the show. And they're like, oh, well, I'm like, if I produce the show, can I be in the show?
Anything to be on stage in your happy place.
Anything to be on stage in my happy place. And that's it. So like when you were talking about, happiness being a motivating factor, and then the arrow of frustration where I can get really, and the funny thing is that like, I'll not only tune out, but I'll get like short with people who it's a waste of time, which ties into the numerology too. Like for me, I'm on to the new experience. I'm looking for the new experience. If something stagnates or gets boring, I'm like,
and I'm out.
I'm ready for the next adventure. Travel too. Like, I mean, more than half, 3/4 of my life has been arranged around how can I have jobs that take me other places.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that I thrive in. Anywhere where I'm stuck in a cubicle, the worst thing about COVID for me was having to be stuck in the same four walls.
Right.
And especially now with the book launch, the book is being relaunched in September. And so I'm doing podcast after podcast it was one of the things I was looking forward to about being on your show. I was like, oh, thank God I get to have a real conversation with a friend instead of all these people who don't know me. And I've been on some great shows with some great hosts, but I've done 117 podcasts in 60 days.
Holy shit.
Oh, it's exhausting.
That's a lot.
It's ridiculous. Like they stack, and you look at it, and then what's worse is you end up saying the same thing over and over again, which again, do you want to talk about numerology? Yes, please. I'm so tired of all the rest of it.
I love it. Well, let's take that because that's a lot. Even for somebody who loves to speak, that is a lot. Yeah. So let's talk about that from the perspective of self-mastery, because I think that kind of commitment and that kind of showing up, that requires a lot of self-mastery. And I'm curious what that terminology means to you, to be self-masterful.
That's a great question. And I think it starts with just being aware of who you are. So one of the things, like the buzzword, especially in the speaker industry right now, is authenticity. I hate that word. Oh my God. Do I ever want to drive that through the door and just beat it senselessly until it dies a slow, painful death? I hate the word authentic right now. And what I think people don't understand is authenticity is synonymous with self-awareness. Like you need to know who you are, why you are, what drives you. You need to know that you're a 10 and that your motivating factor is happiness.
Yes.
There's no amount of money being thrown at you is going to do anything. And until you are aware of why you do the things that you do and what those intrinsic motivating factors are, you're just going to sit spinning your wheels, and you won't have the ability to show up the way that you need to show up. Yeah. But when you know what that is, like for me, I know that I want to be of service. Like that's one of my driving things. Like I am what drives and makes me happy, and where I find the most unique situations and changes when I can help other people out. Mm-hmm. You know, because that provides variety. It provides a sense of service and accomplishment. It strokes my ego because everybody's like, "Oh, thanks, Tyler. You know, I needed your help," and I'm like, "Yeah, I was the guy you called. I needed to be called." So it serves me in a lot of different ways to be of service. Mm-hmm. But until you know that, and so that's the thing. Like when especially on some of the days where, because in my day job, I'm also a health and safety auditor. And so then I'm having to do interviews of people and I'm on this side of the camera at that point, right? And I'm asking the same questions over and over again, trying to make them sound interesting. And so I have this sympathy and empathy for my podcast hosts, where I know that I have to show up, because if I don't make the show good, they can't make the show any better.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I have to bring my A game,
yeah,
or the whole system collapses.
So, it's a co-creation, right? We're not doing this in a vacuum.
Yeah, and so I always just look for what is the unique thing of that show, right? Mm-hmm. And even if it's this like a business podcast, and I've been on 4 that day because that's how my manager stacked them, so that it's easier for me, so that I'm remembering the same talking points. I'm like, I don't remember any of the talking points, but I'm glad you think I do.
Such a 10.
I shoot from the hip every time.
Yeah.
But again, that's because I am aware of who I am. Self-mastery. Mm-hmm. I know what my messaging is. My core messaging doesn't change. My core story doesn't change. I know who I am, so I can show up.
Yeah.
And somebody else is going to deal with the structure. I just know that I have these responses, and I am not satisfied with a canned response, so I don't sit and study.
Yes.
But I know, this same story, like if somebody was to listen, I've told the story about going into a restaurant probably 70 times.
Right.
I said it differently for you, but I've told that story 70 times easily, at least. But it's different each time, because it's not, I'm working it in organically, or if it comes up, or how it needs to be. Yeah. So I'd say self-mastery, first of all, is self-awareness. You need to know who you are. You need to know what those triggers are. And then you need to use those triggers to your advantage. You need to control them versus them controlling you. You need to make conscious choices versus subconscious choices. And once you can make conscious choices, and you're not being driven by the subconscious, you're not driven by base instinct desires, but understanding that this is how I am, this is how I'm structured. I'm still going to do those things, but I'm doing them with purpose instead of by random design. That's when you have self-mastery.
I love that. I love that. And that's really the core of what I teach in my work, right? Know who you are, know what you want, and know why you want it. And when you have those 3 things, the how just naturally comes, and you know what to do in that point. But I think a lot of us skip to well, I want to make money. This used to be me. That's why I know this. I want to make a bunch of money because I'm driven by money, not happiness. I'm a 4. And I know that. So I would just jump to the how. Oh, I want to make money. So how? And I had no idea who I was. And it created so much misery and turmoil in my life. As soon as I understood who I was, what I wanted, and why I wanted it, easy peasy. There's no mountain.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly it. And I think that goes for anyone in life, regardless of what your numerology is. As you said, you break down those 3, and the opportunities begin to present themselves, especially if you're aware of them. I read a wonderful study, and anybody can get it. It's a free white paper now. It used to be a paid book, but you can get the white paper anywhere, called The Luck Factor. And in it, they did a series of studies on people who felt that they were lucky, to see if they had any kind of extrasensory perception, like ESP or something like that. And it ends up they don't. at all. There's no difference between a person who views themselves as lucky versus a person who views themselves unlucky. But what they did find was that people who view themselves as lucky have larger sensory perception of opportunity.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you ever watched the show. I'm fascinated by it. I just love Curse of Oak Island.
Okay.
Okay. So the Lagina brothers, and anybody who doesn't know, as a Canadian, I love the mystery of Oak Island. I've known about Oak Island since I was 8 years old. It was one of the first books that I ever read. There was these series of books in my elementary library that were, Canadian history. And so one of them was the downing of Titanic, which you wouldn't think is Canadian history, except for everybody ended up in Halifax,
right?
Just off the coast of Newfoundland. A lot of people don't realize where the Titanic disaster happened. It's like so close to Canadian waters. It's hurtful. But everybody ended up in Halifax, and there was the Halifax explosion was one of the ones that I read about, and then this mystery of Oak Island, where these boys found this sawed-off oak tree with an old kind of I can't remember what the word is now. Pulley, old pulley hanging off the branch, and then they started digging, and they found the 90-foot stone, which said 40 feet below, there's 2 million pounds buried, and all this fun stuff. And you're like, oh, okay, so fun. And then once they broke through that stone, the tunnel flooded, and now that people have been spending over 200 years looking for this buried treasure. Well, these guys from, I believe they're from Pennsylvania. Originally they're miners, and so they've got a lot of resources behind them, and they've been for the last 8 seasons more than 8 years, but 8 seasons on history, I believe. They've been televising their run to find all this buried treasure, and the thing is, they haven't found any yet,
right?
But they keep finding evidence of it. And what I find fascinating, and why it applies to the luck factor, is these guys see opportunity everywhere. When they don't find what they have, it's not that it isn't there, it's that it's eliminated that as the spot on this 2-acre island. Yeah. So they know for sure it's not there, but it could be anywhere else. And then as they start to find these other markers, and if anybody who follows the show, the last 2 seasons, they've actually found a lot of evidence that is very indicative that something definitely happened on that island, and it involved a lot of money for an unknown reason. Is there still treasure on there? Who knows? But what they have found is fascinating, and that's where people who are lucky, and when you start to understand your whys, where you have this vision within yourself that these are the opportunities, these are where I can go, and you start to notice them. It's not that you have more or less than anyone else. No. It's that you're in such alignment that you are aware of the opportunities and how they apply to you, and you can take advantage of them because of your awareness.
Yes. Oh my gosh, totally. My clients always laugh at me. I sound like a broken record, because alignment is it, or awareness is everything. Yeah. Awareness is everything. So as somebody who's not motivated by money, and this conversation that we love to have at Rebel Radio around wealth, I'm curious what wealth means to you.
Oh, wealth is abundance. You are wealthy when you are abundant in all areas of your life, spiritually, emotionally, financially, socially, and I'm lucky because I am incredibly wealthy. I have so much abundance in my life. I have opportunities left, right, and center. I've got a beautiful wife who puts up with my 10 tendencies in an unbelievable way. She's the most sympathetic and understanding woman I've ever met in my entire life. I am lucky to be with somebody who I can communicate with too, where we understand each other's needs, and we are in alignment and understanding of where we are. And subsequently, we have an incredible daughter who is smarter than the 2 of us combined, which is a genetic gift that I don't know that I could have ever given to anyone else. And I'm so thankful that it worked out the first time, because we don't want to do it again. And, even I look around my house, I'm living in a place that I want to live in. I'm doing things that I want to do. And even when I'm doing 117 podcasts in 60 days, I go, how lucky am I to have done that? Was it exhausting? Absolutely. But did I enjoy every one of those conversations? Absolutely. You know, so I think wealth is recognizing the abundance in our lives and being abundant in all areas of our lives. And once you can recognize where you are a truly, truly wealthy person.
Oh, I love that so much. It's that all-encompassing wealth, right? I've always looked at money as just a side effect of how you feel about your life, and just understanding that money isn't wealth. That's a piece of it, but there's so much more to it. And I love that you bring in that well-rounded version of that. That's awesome. So what's one thing that you wish every entrepreneur knew?
How to network properly.
Mm.
It drives me insane that people go to networking events and use it as an opportunity to carpet bomb with their business card. It drives me insane. And I think people don't understand. First of all, they obviously don't understand what the word network is. And they think that, it's this place for client acquisition, and it's not. Networking is expanding a network of growth-minded individuals who are there to see the entire network grow through cooperation versus competition.
Yes.
And the people who get that are incredibly successful with networking. The people who don't carpet bomb and get ignored, and their business cards end up in the trash. Or worse, on the floor. Like, honestly, if I get that person who comes to me, I'm like, thank you and no.
Right.
I'll in front of your face. This is not a business card that I need. You did not qualify me. And and it's worse too, because a lot of people will get into industries where, well, everybody eats, so you need to buy my pizza. You don't even know what kind of pizza I like, so don't assume that I'm going to want it. It could be the greatest pizza in the world. I might not even be hungry, or I might be fasting, or I might be vegan, or I might have a gluten intolerance, or I might have a dairy intolerance. Like, don't throw your pizza at me. Just because everybody eats doesn't mean everybody eats your pizza.
Yeah.
And I think for me, when I go networking, I go looking for strategic partners who I can align my business with. Sometimes that is clients. Every once in a while it will be. But like, even for me, I'm, whether it's the safety side of my business or whether it's the speaker training side of my business, only, a fraction of companies in the 3 provinces, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and BC, that I can service have a core, which is a certificate of recognition. So not everybody, should everybody have safety? Yes. Under the eyes of the law, are they all required to have these safety systems? Absolutely, yes. Am I a solution for those people? No, because I am very specific in what I do. And yes, they should have it. And yes, I could be, you need a safety system, you need a safety system, you need a safety system. No, they're not going to do it. And for the public speaking, statistically, 77% of people will identify as having a fear of public speaking. And we've already discussed that it's BS, but whatever. You don't have a fear of public speaking. So for the love of God, quit saying it. But 77% of people identify with it. It also has a 10% reduction in your earning potential and a 15% reduction in your ability to get a raise. So that is hampering you financially. So if you are a 4 and motivated by that, you should get public speaking training. But even with that statistic, only 8% of people will actually actively seek professional help to do that. Which means if I go to a networking event with 50 people, only 4 people could be potential clients to me. Could be. And it doesn't mean that they align with me or that I align with them. So stop trying to carpet bomb. What you need to start doing is looking for strategic partners who you can build. Because if I can be a solution, if I know that, Cindy does this incredible business coaching, and I have somebody who comes to me and goes, I am stuck in mindset around my business. I can go, oh, great. I'm not the solution. But if you go talk to Cindy, she has this really good process where she can get you down to the 3 main questions that you need to be answered before you can get to building wealth for yourself. So let me introduce you to her. Now, I have been of service to you. You remember that I have been of service to you. I've also been of service to the person who needed the thing, and they remember that I was of service to them. So when somebody goes to them and goes, oh, I have this presentation I'm fucking terrified to do. I don't even know what to do. You can go, oh, well, you got to phone Tyler because he's the author of The Power to Speak Naked, and he's got this system that will help you, right? Like, We bounce each other up, and that's growing the network.
Mm-hmm.
And when the network is communicating to itself, that's when it is at its most strength.
Yeah.
That's when it has its most potency, because we are all using the power of the network to grow each other's businesses versus being egocentric and going, well, nobody sent me any clients today. Why am I at this networking event? Why am I part of this? Blah.
Right? It's about unity instead of each into his own. I love that. And it's the community versus the competition and really just coming together as a team.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Tyler, I could talk to you all day. I feel like I just want to have you on the show again, but I want to thank you for being here. But as always, we end the show with one last question.
Yes.
What do you dream of for the world?
Well, Cindy, I will tell you that, but before I do, I want everybody who's listening to this on every platform that they're listening to it to hit a pause. And when they hit pause, I want them to go over to whatever platform they're listening to this, whether it's iTunes or who knows what, or what device. I don't care if you're Apple or Android. And I want you to give Rebel Radio a 5-star review. I want you to go and give Cindy the props and the love that she deserves, because it is hard to have a podcast go for one season, let alone many. And she puts a lot of effort into finding quality guests to come and provide value to you each day. So if you're listening to this and you're enjoying what you're hearing, you hit pause right now, give it a 5-star review. And now that you're back, because you hit pause and gave it a 5-star review, now that you are back, I will tell you what I want to see for the world is more understanding through story. I think there is power in story. I think it's the way that we can view each other's worlds through different lenses, because we all are living on this great blue marble together, but we view it differently. No two people view the world the same. And until we realize that, and until we can start to see the world through other people's eyes, through other people's lenses, through other people's biases, we can't have an understanding for what's going on. And there is some weird stuff going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing about it is there's some really amazing and creative solutions for the weirdness that's going on in the world right now.
Yes.
And a lot of it is coming through people stepping into each other's eyes, stepping into each other's viewpoints, and understanding, why do you feel that way? You don't have to agree with everybody. Like, that's the thing. And I think we've got to a point where we've confused opinion for truth and truth for fact. And especially somebody like me who comes from a safety consulting background, like I come and do an accident investigation and I interview witnesses. One event happened, 10 different stories on how.
Right? Yeah.
Are they all lying?
No.
They just viewed the world through different points of view, literally and metaphorically. Somebody was standing over there. Somebody was standing over there. What they saw was different. Yeah. They're not lying. And what they're telling me is their facts, but it isn't necessarily the truth of what happened.
Yeah.
And it's really hard until you can start separating and understanding what that language means. So what I hope for the world is that we can come to more understanding and more empathy through the power of story, instead of this rigid and structured belief that I have to be right. I want people to approach the world from an idea that they are absolutely 100% wrong. And I think if you started doing that, I think the world would be in a much better place. I'm wrong. What is right? And start to explore where that comes from.
Yeah, that openness and curiosity. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Cindy.